Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I'm Sonia from Celestia Astrology, and I'm here with my good friend Mandy Rae from Ecstatic Astrology. And we are the ladies from Asteria Sophia Kairos, our astrology collective. And we're here this week to look at the astrology for the week of the 1st to the 28th of May. So let's have a look at the monthly overview. So this week we're going to be looking at Mercury meeting Uranus in Taurus and Saturn entering Aries. This is the big one. We've been preparing it since the beginning of the year, and even a lot of astrologers before then. Saturn is like up to 3 years in a sign. It was a nice time when Saturn was in Capricorn and Aquarius in its domicile. Then it moved into Pisces and things changed. And we've had it in the nice dreamy waters of Pisces, and now it's going into fiery martial Aries. So it's going to be a significant shift for everybody. And then on the 26th, Mercury will enter Gemini, its own home sign. And again, that will be a nicer ease of shift because Mercury's at home there. And it's just in time. It just slides in. Look at the timing, just less than 24 hours before a new moon in Gemini. So how nice is that? So we just get that just in time. So again, it's one of those weeks where there's only those things happening. And I've put together Mercury entering Gemini and the new moon because they're happening like within 24 hours of each other. So it's worth looking at both of them, but there's only those 4 things really happening. The Mercury conjunction with Uranus. And as Mandy Rae pointed out last week, this is new territory for Uranus. It's at 2742. This is a new place. This is the first planet meeting with Uranus since the sun.
That's it.
We had the sun meeting at
27 degrees.
Yeah, so the sun met it at 27 degrees. And then we got Saturn entering Aries, and Mandy Rae's done a lovely slide of all the significations we might expect. So she's going to take us through that. And then, like I say, we've got Mercury entering Gemini just in time for this lovely new moon in Gemini. So this is all about our communication and how we speak to each other, but it also affects Jupiter. Jupiter's in Gemini as well. So Jupiter in Gemini is going to get this lift. And Jupiter in Gemini has been struggling because it's in detriment or exile opposite its home sign of Sagittarius. So it's going to give that a lift as well to have Mercury there in its home sign and to have this new moon there. It's going to be a fresh start. But look at some of the charts on the 24th. So in the UK, it's happening on the 25th, but for a lot of people, it's going to be the 24th in the US. If your time clock is behind universal time, then it's likely to be in the evening or the daytime beforehand. And if you're ahead of us, it's likely to be during the day. These two meeting now at 27 at this new degree. Mercury signifies the quick mind, and then Uranus comes in and electrifies that. Uranus, sometimes we see as a signifier of the lightning strike, and that's sometimes used for Mercury, the flow of events and opening up this channel where communications, if you think of like a telephone wire, it used to be, but now they travel through the air. Like our communications are sent by satellites and they just beam a light. And if you think of how that light's transmitted and communications travel in that kind of way, and it's kind of the same for both of them, how there's this like suddenness and this instantaneousness and we can't always see it traveling. So there's an inventiveness to that. It's not grounded in the way that Taurus likes to be grounded in physical things that you can see and feel and touch. And suddenly you've got these 2 planets who are like, no, here's all these ideas. Here's things that you can't see and touch. Here's ideas and things of the mind and sudden events. So when they meet in this place, I think maybe it could bring new ideas through that could then be given some groundedness, certainly for us individually. If you've been working on ideas but struggling to put them onto paper and struggling to bring them into form, maybe this could be a good chance to actually get them down into the material world, into the physical world. Like sometimes we say with Uranus, it brings insights through. So maybe it's an insight of a way that you can bring that into form, where you've struggled before, you've had this idea, maybe it's been in your dreams or in your thoughts, but you've got no idea how to bring it into reality. And maybe this is a chance with Mercury ruling our communications, but also our thoughts and our ideas and the way we communicate with other people. It can also be like overcoming borders and barriers as well. Mercury can travel between those borders, so he can find a way around things. So it's quite an interesting conjunction. It can be harebrained ideas as well, like things that might be too much. It can be risky ideas, lack of focus, like that analysis paralysis thing of going down multiple rabbit holes. So again, beware, because in Taurus, we want it to be practical and stable, fixed and focused and lasting. So it's kind of like all the ideas versus let's pick one that's actually going to work.
Right.
So you're kind of pulled in these two polarities maybe at this time. Yeah.
I like that the Sabian symbol says re-beginnings. I like that.
Yeah.
Re-beginnings, because you don't normally put those two together. Re-begin, you know,
Right.
because when you begin, you begin. You're just beginning. But this is a re-begin.
Because we had that last week when the sun met Uranus at 27 as well. It was the re-beginning with the sun, and now we've got the re-beginnings with Mercury. So it's like, okay, the sun has that purpose and it's lighting up the purpose, and now Mercury's coming and saying, okay, you know, how can we communicate this idea? How are you going to verbalize it to other people? How are you going to talk to the right people that you need to talk to? So it's kind of like the two working in tandem and re-beginning that thing. So yeah, those fresh shoots, it's like pay attention to those fresh shoots, that re-beginning, because you've got to let go of something, the old thing, in order to re-begin.
Yeah, and it's so close to a new moon that it is like, maybe I get ideas from this, you know, like strikes of ideas, and also, you know, realizations and all of that. Because I mean, having the sun do it and then having Mercury do it is just like a wham bam, you know?
We've got the moon there in Taurus as well, and the moon is exalted in Taurus. So the moon is kind of willing to bring these ideas through to us from a place where it's really, really comfortable. The moon can communicate things to us. It's the closest planet to us. We can reach what the moon wants to tell us about. Like Taurus is a sign of being really comfortable. Like, are you snuggled up on the sofa with all your snacks around you and a really nice comfy throw? And it's kind of like that would make the moon feel really secure and really comfortable, but you can still have those ideas and work on your laptop while you're doing it. That's kind of the image I get of how this could work, being really comfortable, but the moon helping that comfort that you're in with the moon and your snacks and everything, just helping you do this process. And it's also nice because Algol was there at 26 degrees and Uranus has now moved off that. So an Algol can be a really difficult star, but it can also be very creative. It's like Uranus is coming forward with the creative ideas that maybe it got from Algol, but because it's not right on that star, maybe there's less of a protectiveness or less of the difficulties that are associated with it. And maybe we can feel more of the benefic energy with the moon there. We're in Venus's sign. Unfortunately, Venus can't see, so she can't help, but we've got the co-ruler, the moon there. So that does help it just feel a little bit better and nice in Taurus. We also got this sextile to Saturn here, and Saturn's at this anaretic degree, just preparing to leave Pisces. And obviously we'll be talking about it in Aries very, very soon. Coming up. But this 27, it's like within 2 degrees. Mercury's moving super fast. We were just talking about that, how fast Mercury, it's like it was only like a week or two ago we were talking about Mercury entering Taurus. I think it was the 10th, was it, that Mercury entered? So it's like really fast that Mercury's just zipping through Taurus. And Taurus is a place where you're supposed to linger and take your time. So
that's right.
It's quite strange that Mercury's like running through it. You see all these images of Mercury as the messenger, and he's kind of up on his toes, like running. And I kind of got that image of Mercury. He's on a mission to get to Gemini. He's got work to do there.
Yeah, and get past Uranus. You know, it's like,
yeah.
It reminds me of The Labyrinth with David Bowie, that movie. And, you know, it's kind of like the bog of eternal stench, you know, because you could never tell when it would bubble up and do that thing. And that's kind of like Uranus right now. I think Mercury wants to get past the bog of eternal stench and move into Gemini.
Too unpredictable. It's like he knows, don't want to linger here and enjoy the delights of Venus just right now.
Yeah, and Venus is in Aries, you know, ruling this. And so it does have that active signature to it, that unpredictability almost gets added to with Venus in a fire sign, you know, because once Uranus moves into Gemini, it'll be ruled by Mercury, but it's for 7 years as a transit through a sign for Uranus. So for 7 years, it's been ruled by Venus, and Venus has taken on that Uranian nature with Uranus and Taurus. And finally, Venus is about to shed that, you know, and so this is, I suppose, probably going to be the last Mercury-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, at least for now. There may be another one next year. I'm not totally sure because it does retrograde, and then we'll have Venus hitting Uranus, and then Venus will be free of that Uranian shocks, you know? So that's really nice.
Yeah, so that's July the 7th that Uranus will actually move into Gemini, into Mercury sign. And that's going to be interesting because Mercury moves even faster than Venus does. And it's a mutable sign. At least Venus here is a fixed sign. But here it's like really fast moving things happening once it does move in July.
So true.
So again, that's going to be another shift to expect. We also see like it's a whole sign, but it's at the tip again of this square to Pluto and Mars. They're separated now, comfortably apart, but still by whole sign. It's like it's not as intense as a degree-based square, but it's still those signs. In Hellenistic astrology, we're taught that the signs make the aspects because it's what signs see each other. So these fixed signs all see each other by square. So there is that square dynamic tension. Mars is asking Uranus and Mercury to do something to help Mars in Leo, and the same for Pluto in Aquarius. So what might these two be asking? One that's all about who am I? How do I show up in the world? And what do I need? And Pluto all about the collective and what does humanity need? Rearranging our structures in society.
And this is the last Mercury-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, I checked. And it was the last Sun-Uranus conjunction in Taurus as well. So now I guess I would like to say on this date, because it's the last one, it's really a tap-in situation if you really want to utilize it. I like to think we can co-create with these transits, so hopefully it is a situation in which we can say, I'm really ready to change my mind on something. And I think that's a good way to go into this transit.
Especially if you're getting tension from either of those fixed signs, because the fixed signs just don't like change. They like to sustain. So if you have been stuck with things, this is a real chance to move and shift that energy now.
That's right. And tension is really the catalyst for change as well. When you have that push-pull, something's got to give. And that's these fixed signs. And I think even the fact that the full moon was in Scorpio, I mean, this whole month of May has just been fixed tension,
Yeah, and it's so much harder for the fixed signs to do that change because there's a resistance to it, as opposed to the mutable signs, which want the change. They're always changing. They're open to it and welcoming it. But the fixed signs are like, no, I'm holding on to whatever I've had for the last 10 years. It's working for me. If it's not broken, I'm not going to fix it. And it's so much harder to even see what needs to be changed. Others around us may see what's needing to be changed, and we just can't see it for ourselves. Those I know as a fixed sign person. When people out, and I'm resistant to it.
Yep, I am the same way.
So shall we move to Saturn?
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun. Saturn and Aries on the 25th of May. I want to say maybe the 24th in the US. Let me just double check that. This is something that we have been looking at as astrologers for quite a while. And in fact, I was kind of joking because I feel like I've already been living Saturn in Aries. So yeah, for where I am in Central Time US, it is 10:35 p.m. May 24th. So it's one of those transitional overnight things, depending on where you are in the world and daytime. Now, that being said, doesn't really matter what time because everyone waking up on the 25th of May will have Saturn in Aries. Saturn has not been in Aries. It's a 29-year orbit. It really is elliptical, so it changes, but it takes about 3 years to go through a sign. And it's been a while since it's been in Aries. I like to just 30 is a round number for Saturn. I really like to use it's just about 30 years ago that it was in Aries. Aries is the sign of the warrior. Aries is ruled by Mars, which is action and passion. And yes, when Saturn moves in Aries, Mars will be in Leo, another fire sign. But the thing with Saturn is structure and restriction and foundation. And I'd like to call Saturn the grandfather of the zodiac. It just feels like wisdom and mastery, but also you have to learn the lesson before you get the reward sort of deal. So with Saturn, moving into the sign of the warrior, it's not, how do I say this? It doesn't really like it. It's in detriment in Aries. So it doesn't like to be there because it's in this impulsive sign, and Saturn wants to kind of rein that impulsivity in, but it's not as strong as it could be. So, you have identity, you have authenticity coming to mind, you have independence, and the difference between independence and authority coming in with Saturn and Aries. Yes, here we go. The slide with the keywords. I figured we should talk about the overarching nature of it because, it is such a long transit. Saturn, it's the last planet you can see with the naked eye, really. I mean, I'm sure ancient people with the darkest skies could have seen Uranus, but it makes sense that Saturn is the boundary, And so it starts to get where Saturn takes a while to move. And you go, okay, it's not just about me. Saturn begins to bring in the collective. I think it's the last naked eye planet. And then you go, okay, then I can't see anything else. So courageous discipline and determination. I like that. That's a very positive way to put it. Courageous discipline and determination. Pioneering leadership, bold initiatives, mastering self-reliance and independence, constructive action and strategic planning, ambition with responsibility, innovative solutions with practical foundations, breaking new ground and taking risks. Now, that one to me is a little funny. I do think that that's what Saturn wants, but not without thought, not without consideration. And actually that word comes from with the stars. That's what it means. Consider with the stars. I love that. So consideration is such a Saturn thing. And if you're breaking new ground and taking risks, Saturn wants you to do it from a practical foundation, So building lasting foundations from new ideas, transforming personal power into impact. It's a very leadership type of transit, I think, and it's going to bring out the leaders in everyone. Empowerment through adversity, initiating change, but with structure. All of these things are very Saturnian, but also Martian in nature. So you have to mix the archetypes here. But I love this Mark Twain quote, courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act in spite of it. So Saturn does tend to bring in, you see the obstacle, and it's like, if you can see that, a lot of times it will stop you in your tracks. I see this wall up ahead. How am I going to get past it? I'm scared of it. But instead, it is the ability to act in spite of that fear and to see the wall and say, I can take on this wall. Do you want to go back and look at the charts? Do you have any keywords to add to it, Sonia?
I have a Saturn in Aries, and what really strikes me about this is like, obviously it's ruled by Mars, so you've got both the so-called malefic planets, and malefic doesn't mean evil or bad. It just means that they tend to bring things that we don't like. So I can attest to the fact that Saturn has brought things that I don't like. But also, we have thought of Saturn going through Pisces as being like a cruise ship. Saturn moves slowly, is the lord of time. And I think of him as like a cruise ship that he can't navigate quickly. It takes time. They have to plan their routes. They can't, if a smaller boat is in the way, it's the smaller boat's got to move. That big cruise ship isn't navigating around easily. So if it's got to change course, it's going to take so many miles for it to actually start veering in a different direction. And then suddenly it comes into this fiery place with Mars, who's the warrior. He's up on his toes, he's battling, and he's got his armor on. Heavy armor, yes, and also he moves a lot faster through the zodiac. So Saturn's going to experience this. When Saturn's been in its own signs of Capricorn and Aquarius, there was that steadiness of it being in domicile. And then in Pisces, also Jupiter is another slower planet. So now we're picking up speed here with the planets that are ruling Saturn. So yeah, Mars is in a triplicity relationship here with Saturn, also in a fire sign. So there's support here from Mars. But when Mars moves into Virgo, dual-natured, quicker sign ruled by Mercury, who's the quickest of all the planets, we need to prepare for that Saturn to be like experiencing these shifts every time Mars moves through different signs. It's going to be a slightly different experience as well as its ruler moves around the zodiac, and that's important to bear in mind. The experience of Saturn that we had, because Capricorn and Aquarius are together, they're the only two signs in the zodiac that are ruled by Saturn, and they're together. We had that extended period, like 6-7 years of Saturn being quite stable, and then suddenly that shift into Pisces was a bit of a shock, but also a slower planet. And now this is like, okay, things are really changing. And then, of course, we've got the fact that it's so close to Neptune. It's going to get even closer, like within minutes of Neptune. But they call it rephrenation when the planets get really close, but don't actually get exact. And then they separate before they meet. and then it's going to be 2026 before they will actually meet together, but we'll get some really good ideas on what they're going to signify. But I attended like a Richard Tarnas talk on what they signified, and he played a playlist, and it was a lot of songs that have really touched me. I've got Saturn and Neptune like girded in my chart, and it was like music that I know from when I was like really young, and it always made me cry. And it's like, oh, so this is why I'm so emotional about it. I've got that signature, that Saturn Neptune signature in my chart, and it's getting really into your emotions. But obviously Mars, what is he going to do with those emotions? Mars wants to take action on those. And it's like Joni Mitchell's song, Clouds of Dreams. I've seen both sides now. That was it. And there was some other ones by Bob Dylan and everything. It's like, I've always loved that. It's always made me cry. I'm not always very emotional, and I don't always cry at songs, but like there's just those few that really touch you in the feels. And his whole playlist, I was like, and
I could see that. I could, and I think it's going to be so interesting with Mars being the ruler. And luckily we're out of shadow and Mars won't be retrograde for at least a little bit. So I think with Saturn and the warrior's home sign it's reminding me of, they're building houses so fast now. And Saturn is such a structural planet, and it does rule time. And then you get it into a fast. I think with Saturn moving into Aries, and then further on, if we look in the future, Jupiter will be in Cancer and Uranus will be in Gemini. It feels like things are moving faster these days. And I think that makes sense with AI even, And a lot of times Saturn in Aries, I mean, you have to sort of think of war. I think that might be a good thing to kind of look at, because you have to innovate warfare whenever it comes to Saturn and Aries. And then you have Uranus moving into Gemini. And I think that could be something you see, some new ways of people fighting. And I know that that's uncomfortable, but I mean, it's Saturn. And unfortunately, Saturn brings in new structures, new foundations. The elephant in the room, Neptune's there. I mean, literally, Neptune's like the elephant in the room. Everyone's like, don't look at it. Don't look at it. Because in 2026, Saturn will hit Neptune,
Really know. And of course, Saturn's like speaking to in connection with that Pluto that's wanting to reconfigure how society is structured.
Oh, yeah.
And then, but it's also got that sextile with the sun in Gemini that's looking at our data and everything. But we've still got Mercury just separating from the meeting that it had with Uranus, all those new ideas we were talking about.
That's right.
All of those new things coming through. And Mercury's preparing to take them into Gemini and bring them into a grounded way, but that's all still happening. Mercury's next stop will be the sun.
Yeah. I think embracing responsibility and practicing patience, because of the way Aries is so quick to act. Practicing patience is probably going to be a good mantra to have through this. And also, maybe setting clear goals, because again, Mars is so quick to act. And with Saturn there, you want to have the goals before the action. And you're going to have to develop some resilience through this, because Aries is such an independent personal sign. And to have personal responsibility and resilience is going to be important. Strength, perseverance. And I think the last time it was in Aries would have been like 96 through 98. And if you can tap into that, and then 67 through 69, right? Because that's around when you were born. And if you can tap into that, and maybe go look up the history if this is something you're interested in, because I think of the late 90s, I was just about to graduate high school. And honestly, it felt like things were new and fresh in a way with Saturn and Aries. And I'm sure there were other transits going on around that time. And I think of the late 60s too. And I think of what was going on around then. And it was a lot of people acting out like, hey, quit, I guess, don't oppress me, man. That's what I get from it, because Saturn is a kind of oppression. And I mean, you can look at it that way. And Aries is me. Aries is how I act and what I'm passionate about. So you're probably going to have a lot of that, a lot of quit pushing your thumb on me, and a lot of those feelings. And so working with that nature before we get there is probably going to help. And I think that'll probably, Saturn Neptune will be a very big catalyst for that type of thing. It wouldn't surprise me if there was another summer of love, on this time.
It would be nice to have a summer of love, wouldn't it? Another like Woodstock and
Wouldn't it?
Get all of those vibes going. That would, yeah. Can we book that in, please, rather than the war?
Yeah, exactly.
It leaves for Taurus in April 2028. And with regard to Neptune, when they meet next year in 20th of February, they'll meet 0 Aries. So not quite.
Yeah.
Who's going to have to move back from where it is right now. Their last conjunction, Neptune and Saturn, was 13th of November 1989 at 10 Capricorn.
Here we go.
So yeah, that was a different vibe there to Aries. That's all, like as Mandy was saying, about the independence and who am I, and really leaning into finding that.
Yeah. And I think like we were talking about just before we started recording, we're already getting that with Saturn at the anaretic degree of Pisces. I mean, we're recording this on May 15th, so we're still Saturn and Pisces right now while we're recording this, and we're tapping into Saturn and Aries, but I'm already hearing who am I from people, including my husband. My husband recently went through a job loss, and one of the things he said, I just have to find out who I am. And I was like, Saturn's moving in Aries. It is who am I? What is this structure? And so Saturn will retrograde back September 1st, I think, into Pisces through February. Yeah, September 1st.
July is when it turns retrograde, but I haven't got the ingress.
Yeah. So the ingress is September 1st, and then the next ingress is February 13th. So basically the winter, we're going to return to Saturn and Pisces. That's sort of how it feels, fall and winter. But for the summer, you get to flirt with the newness of Saturn and Aries.
Yeah, it's interesting because like Saturn is tending to be cold and restrictive, and Mars heats things up, it burns and inflames. So sometimes people say, well, you think maybe that could cancel it out. But it's not. It's like this heat up, cool down, heat up, cool down. What are you doing that's heating up, cooling down? And trying to manage that process as well.
Yeah, that's like forging. It reminds me of forging like a sword or something, because you do have to heat it up and cool it down to do that. And it's such a Martian idea, Yeah.
And to get more information on that, we can look at where Mars is. Obviously Mars now in the fire sign. Yeah. It's the heat. That's the main thing that's happening. And then it's going to go into Earth. So, maybe that sword goes into the Earth, or, that process. But
and then when it moves into Virgo, it's like the sword in the stone. You have to pull it out.
Yes. Yeah, it's forged and it goes in there. And then suddenly it's in the air when he pulls it out and brandishes it. Then it goes back into the water when it goes into the lake. It's the whole story.
It is a whole story. I didn't realize it was, Arthurian legend, but here we are.
Yeah. How did that happen?
I know. I'm going to have to look now. I'm like, well, what is this? That's kind of a Saturn and Aries story. It really is, Knights of the Round Table. You have to structure the war, I like that.
Yeah, that's how they brought the structure. That's how they appointed the king.
That's right.
Getting that sword out of the stone. I mean, the charts know everything, don't they?
They do. They really do.
But yeah, just that Aries area of your chart, which is the cardinal signs. So Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn are those signs that are going to really feel the most of it. But also, if Saturn's your Lord of the Year, obviously if you're Aries rising.
I'd say Scorpios too, because they're both Mars ruled. Probably good to look at your Scorpio area.
Yeah. Anybody who's got like significant Mars ruled placements, I think everybody's going to feel it on some level, because it's such a big shift, especially coming from water into fire. It's like, that's quite dramatic as well. I just said one last thing. I noticed like Mars, when I was talking about the speed that Mars moves, Mars will retrograde. Its next retrograde isn't for 2 years. It will be in January 2027. It'll be in Virgo, which is obviously where we're experiencing the eclipses. So also there's like that theme of, okay, we're going to have instability and a churning up as the eclipses move through Virgo, Pisces. And then suddenly Mars is going to retrograde there, and that's going to be affecting Saturn in Aries as well. So it's going to be this extended process of, we're going to have the eclipses, and then we're going to have the Mars retrograde in January 27. So that Pisces Virgo area of our charts, and so the mutable areas and that cardinal area is going to be getting like these longer term shifts that the eclipses bring in, and then Saturn comes in afterwards, and Mars to sort of finish up the cleanup work to rebuild the structures as Mars does that retrograde, and it's informing Saturn. So that's kind of a time to watch out for as well, with Saturn in Aries.
Yes, that is good knowledge to have.
We'll go on to the new moon in Gemini. So this is a bit lighter, a little bit more fun. We've got this beautiful picture here from Nicola Allen from the Wild Way Oracle deck of the magpie, and he's blinded wearing his sovereign medallion. I don't know. I'm thinking of it as like maybe a talisman. Has it got a compass on it that's guiding him? I've got questions about this card. And we see Mercury, it's the 27th in London. So yeah, I always have the American dates in my notes. And then the event chart for London is the 27th at 4 a.m. in British Standard Time. So it would be 3:02 in Universal Time. So again, if you're behind us in the US, it would be the 26th, depending on how many hours you're behind the Universal Time. So this is the new moon in Gemini at 6 degrees and 05 minutes. And this is air. So we're getting this breath of fresh air now, this mutable air. It wants to change around. It's masculine. So it's masculine or yang, which means it's outward expression. And how that's also related to how fast it reacts. It's responsive. It's going to react fast. And it's also trining Pluto in Aquarius. It's like within this degree of engagement within the 3 degrees. But we also see Mercury, its ruler. Mercury would be burned up by the rays of the sun and combust this close to the sun. But because it's in Mercury in its own sign, we say it's in its chariot. So it's protected. It's like got a high level sunscreen on, if you like, and got a lot of protection from the rays of the sun. So it's kind of allowed into that throne room with the sun ready for its Cazimi with the sun, which is kind of nice. And obviously it's going to be approaching Jupiter in Gemini as well, who's been struggling, but I feel like all of this is going to give Jupiter a bit of a bounce and a bit of a lift. So if the Jupiter and Gemini significations have been giving you problems in that area of your chart, in the Gemini mutable area, you might find this new moon gives a fresh start, some fresh ideas and significations.
My 12th house can use it. I can tell you that much. I really can use that.
Yeah, my second house can. Jupiter in Gemini has been expensive for me. It's like not money flowing in, it's money flowing out. But hey, let's hope it's creating something that will change that. Yeah. So these mutable signs are like in the spotlight. So that is Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. So we've had these mutable signs. Obviously, the nodes are there, so the eclipses are changing things up. But the new moon just gives that dignity with Mercury there, and the sharing of information. Mercury is like the charisma, and like it's very social. You imagine a lot of people sharing a lot of information in a room. Mercury, the messenger, just taking all the information to lots of different people.
Also trickstery. I get trickster from this too. So
yeah, certainly. You've always got to check that information is correct and what tricks he could be playing. And the decan co-rulers here are Jupiter and Mercury. So we see Mercury there. And the triplicity ruler is Mercury. So Mercury's just got a lot going on and a lot to say. And Mandy, you were going to say about the bounds of the moon as well.
Yes. So there is 23 degrees, 28 minutes is the ecliptic. So sometimes planets and even the moon can float away from it. That's where the sun, the track of the sun is. So when something is above it, above that 23 degrees, 28 minutes, it's known as out of bounds. So out of bounds, planets or luminaries, because I don't want to call the moon a planet, it's a luminary, they can act more independently or more intensely. And I like to think of out of bounds as wild and crazy. That's what it makes me think of, you know? So when you have the moon out of bounds, then you have wild and crazy, more intense emotions. It's really just like forging your own path, right? So having a new moon with the moon out of bounds is really neat, I think, because it is like this new moon that's like a super fresh start. Your emotions and your mind are firing off with each other. And to have Jupiter in the same sign too is really, I think it's going to do a lot for cleaning up this area in some way. But the one thing that I found was interesting is not too long after this, June 1st, Mercury goes out of bounds. So then you'll have your mind being able to have these new ideas or wanting to just speak your mind. I think more Mercury is how you think and how you communicate. So June 1st, when it moves out of bounds, you know, ideas go off the chart, you know. So I just really look forward to it's almost like healthy Gemini with this signature, I guess, because having Mercury in its own home sign and then the sextile to Saturn and Neptune with this new moon is really nice as well. Sextiles are opportunity. There is a sign-based sextile with Mars and Leo, and there's not much now that Saturn's in Aries that is impeding Gemini right now. If anything, Gemini has a boost with Jupiter there. So This is a really, really nice new moon. I'm so looking forward to it. But yeah, out of bounds planets are something to look up if you're curious. And definitely if you're mutable. And I would even say if you have air signs, Libra, Gemini,
Oh,
Aquarius. Thank you. Gosh. I mean, and this is trine Pluto, maybe not to the degree, but Mercury is certainly approaching the exact trine. So, I mean, it's empowering, I think, for air signs. I like this.
Oh, sorry, you said air signs. I was going in with mutables.
Yeah, I did mutables too. I mean, I think mutables will have more of a depends on which mutable sign you are. You know, if you're Virgo or Pisces, this is going to be square your placement. And I think the squares are a little more tense to me. I think the oppositions are more like a mirror. So that would be Sagittarius. But for sure, the Virgos and the Pisces may have a little bit of adjusting to do to this. But I think the air signs, Aquarius, Libra, and Gemini are going to really receive a boost from the trine.
Yeah, that's nice. And we see Jupiter there is like squaring the nodes as well. So that boost that Jupiter brings is somehow karmic and fated. It's like it's done all this hard yards, and it's like, oh, it's like this is what it's all been about, kind of thing. It's like,
right.
Okay, I get it now. And of course the full moon would illuminate, but a new moon is kind of dark. So it's like secret and hidden. So we won't know what that means yet, but maybe once the sun gets there, we'll get some insight. And the sun will also then be squaring the nodes. And that would light up what that Jupiter is learning as it's moving past the square with the nodes.
Yeah, luckily it's not at the bending. I mean, it still really is, though. It's just only a couple of degrees. And I think when the sun gets there, it's always really important to look at the sign that's square to the nodes because it is the point of action, I think, you know. So we had the Pisces eclipses with the North Node during Pisces season and Virgo, obviously, but the sun was in Pisces. This is the first time we get to really take action on that topic. I want to say it was Dane Rudyard that called the first quarter square of the moon crisis in action. I like to look at the new moon square to the nodes as that as well. And when I say crisis, I don't mean like, you know, scary crisis. I mean, it's time for action is what that means. And I think here in Gemini is when we'll take action on it. And I can already tap into my own significations and go, oh yeah, I can see how that I will take action here to help me in the Pisces and Virgo areas.
Yeah, it's like a turning point or an adjustment. So something's been initiated, but it's not going to stay exactly the same throughout that whole story of the moon's journey, returning back to the Pisces area. So it's like, okay, I've got to change that. You start being aware of what needs changing as the moon's moving more visible in its cycle. You start to be aware of what you've got to change and what you've got to do. So it's like where you're really called to take that action that's necessary, and you're kind of like forced to do it, which hence the word crisis. But as opposed to like in the early days, the thing is just developing on its own. It's just cooking nicely or growing nicely if you think of a new shoot. But suddenly, as it emerges, you become aware, okay, I need to weed around this, I need to water it, it needs support, it needs, you know, whatever it needs, whatever adjustments you need to make. And quite often, if you see it in a story, quite often when we look at astrological charts or something and you can see somebody's story and how it's progressed like that, you often see that there's a significant turning point. Okay, they started writing a book, but they changed publisher or something at that point. You know, it's not necessarily high drama, but there's always a shift somehow. It's like really interesting.
I agree too. I mean, I like you said it's not always high drama. I like that, but there is a shift. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just look out for that shift or what's calling for you to take action that could be related to those Pisces Virgo eclipses that we had earlier. So the ruler Mercury, I see sextiling that Neptune Saturn. So I think we spoke about that already, didn't you?
I just mentioned it, and sextiles are opportunity. So there's opportunity to understand how to build, I think, and how to dream. You know, Neptune's dream, Saturn wants to build, Mercury wants to understand how to do it here and gather the information. And I think that's a really nice thing to have along with the trine to Pluto. It's just probably the best new moon so far this year. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. It's just the best new moon so far, and I'm extremely looking forward to it.
Yeah, because so far everything's been difficult. There's been problems and difficult things that we're looking out for, but this just has more ease in it, doesn't it? More, the sextiles and trines just bring more ease. Although I recently attended a workshop with Michelle Cabizier, and she was saying about how trines can also bring things that you can't avoid as well, even though it's the ease of it is just, okay, this is going to happen, as opposed to a square that needs you to take action, and action often involves decisions. But ease is just, okay, this thing is happening, whatever you do. So there's that to be aware of with trines, which was like an interesting thing to add to the way I look at them. That, yeah, there can be an opportunity there, but also sometimes just something's just happening. With astrologer Kira Ryberg has named the decan, this decan of Gemini 1, where it's falling, this Jupiter decan here, named it Curiosity, and Austin Coppock names it the apple, as in the apple that Adam and Eve was tempted by the snake to. So again, it is that curiosity of, what is this? We're in this garden, this paradise garden, but there's this poison apple that we just gotta try. It's that curiosity. That curiosity kills the cat. It's leaning into that Gemini curiosity of all the rabbit holes, and there's a little warning of caution there, I suppose, as well, if you're getting too curious. And in the tarot, it's linked to the 8 of Swords. So again, that's swords representing the mind and the mental activity as well, and some sort of battle with that as well, maybe some sort of internal battle, and leading into trusting yourself and your inner knowing with that. And we've got those keywords as well, those infinite possibilities of all those rabbit holes, but how that can in itself create analysis paralysis. I mean, I've found sometimes when there's too much choice, I don't end up making a decision. It's like all the NORWAC lectures. Sometimes there's so many and I can't decide. And even if I go to like my favorite astrologers or a topic or something, and it's like there's so many, and I save it in a tab, and I end up not buying. Whereas I might buy, if there's just one lecture from one favorite astrologer, I'll just buy it and watch it. But sometimes when it's just that overwhelming amount, you kind of end up not being able to make a decision. And then just that need, that's how we deal with it, is trusting this inner knowing. So this magpie who's blindfolded, he's just going to have to trust his own inner knowing and senses of where to go, which direction, where his shiny things are going to be. So it's using those other senses sometimes when there's an overwhelming amount of data coming at us, which there really is, and there will be more so with Mercury and Jupiter and the new moon in Gemini. It's like really getting clear on what we need from all those social media sites that we visit. What are they doing for us? What are we getting from it? Rather than just spending days scrolling, it's like we're recreating that relationship we have with them now. And so the Wild Way card here obviously gives us those keywords, but talks about these infinite possibilities, and the Gemini 1 magpie having this extremely curious mind and loves to explore all these options. But sometimes this desire for multiplicity generates this overthinking and too many options, creating this analysis paralysis, and sometimes anxious thinking with all those swords as well, and sometimes creating that trap that comes from your own mind. And when this happens, we've got to remember to drop out of our head and that thinking mind and into your heart or into your body and see where you're pulled, and use your intuition as well as your mind. And instead of ruminating and allowing the unhelpful thoughts to just run away with you, return to your center. Like being an air sign, maybe just remember that you can ground yourself. We've still got planets in Taurus. The air sign can't see Taurus, but Mercury does also rule this grounded sign of Virgo, and it's square. So you can take action by leaning into a little bit of Virgo.
That's right.
Make a list, check it twice. And that could be good advice if you find yourself a little bit overwhelmed with it. Do something a little bit Virgo, or even a little bit Pisces if you wanted to. And that could maybe help. So was there anything else you wanted to add there, Mandy?
No, I think that's a really good round overview of the new moon.
We will be back next week, looking at the 28th to the 4th of June. I'm Sonia from Celestia Astrology, and thank you so much to Mandy Rae from Ecstatic Astrology. I think I will be back with Krista, but it may be Mandy Rae. That's to be continued, because life is happening. We've had a difficult moon and things are happening. Thank you so much, Mandy Rae, for joining us. Do we have a word of the week?
Yeah, I honestly, man, it's got to be related to this new moon. I think the new moon, and it's possibility, especially with Saturn and Aries.
Yes, those new possibilities that are coming through, and an emoji for that.
Oh, a crystal ball.
Yes. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, because
So many possibilities in the crystal ball.
yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Mandy Rae. I
Absolutely.
hope you've enjoyed this. If you do, please like, subscribe, and comment on how your week's gone. And if you've experienced these new possibilities, if you can identify them, do share an emoji of a crystal ball. Thank you.
Thank you.